Hey guys, this is Jonathan from Fitness for Freedom. Today we are going to show you the 5 different ways that you can train your glutes. All right, so your glutes are a very important muscle. They're one of the biggest muscles and hopefully one of the strongest muscles in your body. Now, unfortunately, when most people strength train their glutes, they really only focus, or usually they really only focus on 1 or 2 movements and do those over and over and over again. But really, there's 5 components to a good glute program, or 5 components you should look at when you're doing a good glute exercise program. Now, we're gonna go through those 5 movements. The first is a thigh extension. So that is this movement here, where you're bringing your leg straight back past your hip, okay? So the main movement you should be using is your glute for that. As if you're striding up a hill or walking or running, then you want your glute active as you do that. So an exercise, or a really common exercise that I see, is this sort of a movement back, where you're pushing your leg or pulling your leg straight back. Okay, so a couple of mistakes that I see people make is, one, as they do the exercise, they'll let their back really arch a lot, okay? And that puts a lot of strain on your lower back, and you want to really try to avoid that. So it's very important that you keep your hips and your pelvis nice and stable and not let your back arch as you bring your leg back. And now what that means is that you'll probably have to lower the weight a little bit. Now, another mistake, or something that you can't necessarily see, but it's a feeling that you'll have. And as you do this exercise, you'll probably feel it in your hamstring. And if that's the case, then I strongly encourage you to watch our glute activation video so that you can get your glutes active as you do this exercise, because you really want your glute active a lot more than your hamstring as you're doing that motion. Now, you do use your hamstring, but glute is the one we want doing most of the work. Okay, so now the second variation, or the second movement that you should probably do when you're doing a glute program, is the leg or hip abduction. So we're going straight out to the side, okay, just like this. So just like the thigh extension, we have the hip abduction, which is basically the lateral motion for the same, using the same band, you do a lateral motion, okay, where we're going straight out to the side. So you'll feel that on the outside of your hip here, and that's how you know you're doing this particular movement properly. Now, what's interesting is that you'll be using your other hip during the same movement for the third type of movement, and that's a hip stabilization. So where we're not actually moving the hip, we're just using it, not actually moving the glute, we're just using it to stabilize our hip. Okay, so you're holding on the post or the wall or whatever, and as you do this exercise straight out, you're going to actually feel it a lot in the other hip as well, and that means it's working to stabilize your hip, and that's really important as you do these types of glute exercises. Now, the very most common, or the most common way that I see people train their glutes would be through some form of a lunge, where they're pushing up off their heel, or a squat, or a deadlift, okay? Where you're basically doing this sort of hip hinge movement, or hip extension, okay? Or different variations of the hip extension. Now, one of the problems as you're doing these types of exercises is that often people don't necessarily feel them very much in their glutes, or they don't really feel like their glutes are working. And if that's the case, it means you're not activating your glutes as well as you could be, and it's something you need to work on. And that's where these other 4 type of glute movements come in really handy to help strength train them, get you activating them and firing them. So that's why it's really important that we put in all of the movements that you can onto your glutes, so that they're developed evenly and shaped appropriately. Okay, so the last exercise in the circuit to make sure you're getting all 5 parts of your glute is the clam opener. So a clam opener is done like this, where you lay down on your side. Okay, and we're really going to work on the rotation of the rotational ability of your hip as you do this exercise. Now, this is an exercise that's very challenging to do properly, so I recommend you try to get your feet in line with your back. Keep your hips rolled forward over the top, okay, so that you're not leaning back like this, okay? And you're bringing your knees apart from each other while keeping your feet together. And you're doing this exercise properly, you'll feel it in your glute and on the outside of your hip. Now, if this is too easy for you, you can put a band around your knees or rest a weight on your thigh, which we have demonstrated in another video. But it's very important. The most important thing is to keep your hips forward like this, okay? So that's gonna help you strength train the rotational ability of your glute. All right, so that's the 5 areas. We have the hip extension, which is like a squat or a lunge. We have the thigh extension, where you're bringing your leg straight back. We have the leg abduction, where you're bringing your leg straight out to the side. We have the the stabilization, where you're using your glute to stabilize your body if you're standing on one foot or on an unstable surface. And we have the rotation of your glute. So that's like the clam opener, okay? So those are the 5 areas or 5 movements that you need to do to target every single aspect of your glute. So it's very important that when you're doing an exercise program that it encompasses or includes all of those portions. Now, I've just demonstrated 5 different exercises. There's probably really 3 to 6, 10, or 12, depending on the exercise, of different ways that you can train the movements. And we have links to all those below where we go deep into each one of those different movements and how you can strength train them differently and effectively. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel because we deliver videos just like it every week. If you have any comments or questions about glute exercises or glute activation, please leave them in the box below. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.